Welcome to the How Med Works podcast. Today we're speaking with Phoebe Zhang, a clinical year PA student at LIU Brooklyn and also the founder of howmedworks.com. But she's much more than a student. She's also a published researcher from a Stanford fellowship, the founder of the healthcare resource site, howmedworks.com, where we're speaking, and she currently holds key leadership roles with the AAPA and the PA History Society. From award-winning science and music achievements in her past to future plans in endocrinology and robotic surgery, Phoebe is making waves. Phoebe, it's so great to have you on.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know I gave a little bit of an introduction for you, but would you mind telling me exactly where you are in your PA school journey and anything that's on your mind currently?
Yeah, so I'm currently a second year PA student at Long Island University in Brooklyn, New York, also known as LIU. I am currently on my seventh rotation, so almost there. Graduation's right around the corner this November. Right now, I'm just kind of wrapping up the rest of rotations and also focusing on my extracurricular leadership and advocacy roles.
Great. Well, that's awesome to hear, Phoebe. And so with this podcast, the goal is to support first pre-PA students and then current PA students, I'm sure they have a ton to learn from your journey. So to kick things off there, our question is, many pre-PA students worry about having the right experiences. But based on your journey, what advice do you have for students on how to effectively identify and highlight their own unique strengths and experiences, even maybe in non-medical areas? And how did you create a compelling application from that?
That's a lot of questions. I guess I'll try to go in order. So, first, experiences. I think first and foremost, you should definitely pick what you're interested in, especially if you know it's a specialty you want to go into later or work in at some point. That being said, you also have to think about where you're applying to. So, something that I found out while I was applying, which was probably better to have found out before, was that East Coast and West Coast PA programs kind of look at different things. So, East Coast PAs are much more integrated into the healthcare system. So, because of that, they're kind of willing to take on people who want to go into a variety of specialties versus West Coast. They definitely prefer primary care, family medicine, internal medicine, that kind of thing. So, if you plan on practicing on the West Coast later, that might be something you want to think about just in general because the PA profession was founded on kind of the principles of helping in underserved areas and primary care. A lot of programs do view your application as a little bit stronger if you have that experience. So, for me, for instance, I wanted to stay in California, but just based on kind of application requirements and which one kind of fit my skill set better, I definitely ended up applying way more East Coast programs and obviously now go to a PA program on the East Coast. So that's just something to keep in mind that I wasn't aware of when I was applying. And as far as making a competitive application, definitely have all your stuff done early. I feel like this applies to pre PAs and PA students. Don't wait till the last minute to get everything done. So, this involves trying to get your hours early. If there's any classes you have to make up, make those up early. For me personally, I didn't decide on PA school until maybe 2 or 3 months before the application opened that cycle, and I didn't wanna wait, a whole 'nother year for the next application cycle, so I was really, really cramming. I was taking classes online, I was working. It was just hectic and writing all the essays, obviously, with CASPA. So, definitely get all that stuff done early, look at the schools you want to go to, see what they require because every single program is different, and kind of make a list based on that, and then just get those things done. Even essays, like your personal statement, it's the same question every single year. Work on it no later than January of that year when the cycle opens. Get lots of people to look at it. Just have everything you possibly can get done early, early.
Absolutely. Great advice. And was there one thing that you learned along the process that you'd want to share with future PA school applicants that you had wished you'd known sooner, aside from starting early?
I definitely recommend going to their open houses. I tried to do this for pretty much every program I was applying to, which was quite a few. It does get a little bit time consuming, but basically each PA program should have an open house. Usually they have around like three if you can't make one of the dates. But basically, it's like an overview to what they have to offer, kind of what they're looking for in students, any tips that they have specifically for their program, and just to see if you're a good fit. Not only can you determine if that's somewhere you actually want to go, it also shows that you're interested in that school. You can also figure out, like, do they really care about volunteer work or do they really care about DEI? Do they really care about whatever it is so you can better tailor your application later, because the majority of PA programs do have a secondary essay, and a lot of times it's very geared towards their school, like specifically. So if you go to the info session, even just throwing in the little thing like, oh, I know that every year in October you guys have this event and it's like very specific to this school, could give you a one up on other applicants.
Yes, that is such a helpful insight, especially noticing that the different schools have different criteria that they're looking for, different values, and tailoring your application, your experience into that is so helpful. So, great point there. I was wondering, outside of that, I know that you went out of your way to speak with practicing PAs even before applying and before getting into your program. Could you tell me a little bit about your mindset there and what value that added?
Yeah, so this was super helpful. I think it also definitely was one of the things that made me get involved in advocacy later, which we'll get to. But it was kind of twofold. One, I wanted shadowing hours, which isn't like a set requirement for most programs. Like they usually recommend it, but a lot of them don't say like how much. Regardless, that's just something I wanted to add to my app first and foremost, just to have it there. But second, I wanted to come back to Hawaii to practice after, and all the programs that I was applying to, like none of them were in Hawaii. So just kind of networking ahead of time and knowing that I had people I could talk to that actually worked in the state that I wanted to was important to me. And then just kind of seeing what their experience was like, because it definitely is different state to state. Again, like how I said earlier, with East Coast, kind of whatever specialty you want, like you can work in. West Coast definitely prefers primary care, and then Hawaii also does kind of fall into that category a little bit. So that was kind of good to know. And what I use specifically, because I feel like it's very hard unless you actually know a lot of PAs just randomly somehow to actually get into contact with them. I did have the pre-PA AAPA membership, and they have a platform on there called Huddle. It's completely free with the membership, and basically you can find all the PAs that have signed up to be mentors on there and literally put like I'm interested in this state or this specialty or this area, and then based on that, like it'll come up with a list of contacts that you could potentially reach out to. So that's actually how I found a lot of my like PAs that I shadowed. And I definitely recommend pre-PAs check that out also.
Terrific. Yeah, great tip. Okay, so fast forward, you get accepted into PA school. What is that like from acceptance to then, enrolling in the program the first couple of weeks? Can you take someone who just got in and is super excited to attend their PA school through the process of going from, a prospective PA matriculant to actually getting started with the program?
Yeah, so I feel like academically it wasn't too big of a change just because I was still finishing up some classes even after or like around the time applications were happening and even a little bit after, because you do get a little bit of leeway. Like it doesn't all have to be done when the apps do. So I don't think it was too hard transitioning academically into PA school because it wasn't like I hadn't been in school for a long time. And then also, our program in particular does require a little bit of summer work. It's nothing crazy, but it definitely kind of prepares you for, I would say, like after the first week, all the information just comes at you. So I don't think in terms of academics, the transition was that hard. I think the harder part was probably moving across country to a very, very busy New York. That was kind of the main shift, and finding housing and all of that was a little bit stressful. But again, that kind of depends on your program. In terms of housing, I know a lot of PA programs use GroupMe. For all the different classes, like they make them while the application cycle is going. So if you can find yours online, you want to room with people. I know people in my class have found each other even before school started through that, and that's how they found their housemates. Other people ended up, once they became friends, they moved off of on campus housing and then they moved all in together and they all live in like a giant house. So it's a little bit kind of depends on your situation.
Definitely. That is really good to know. Are there any other rapid fire tips that you have just for getting started for new PA students? I know like housing and the concern of getting started on your classes, having that ramp up period is really important, but just anything else top of mind there?
I think I do want to say this kind of goes back to again doing everything early. All the onboarding stuff, try to get done as soon as you can. There's a lot of labs that are required, so you have to go to your doctor to go get those done just because it's school, and also there's extra just because you're in healthcare. And a lot of places, especially if you don't have an established doctor, you could be waiting months for that visit, even though like it should be a really quick thing just to draw some blood. But keep that in mind. As soon as you are committed to that school and they start sending all the onboarding stuff, just get it done. It makes it a lot less stressful later when you're actually having to move and do everything. So I know for me, I had even started doing some of that stuff for the programs that I was waitlisted at. And it didn't make too big of a difference just because the requirements were pretty much the same from school to school. But I got all the labs done. If there were any like online certifications that I had to do, I got those done right away. Because in your mind, you think like, "Oh, this won't take long. It'll take like 30 minutes." But like, if you wait all the way until August, September, or when like school actually starts, you're kind of screwed a little bit. You're just so swamped with everything else. Just get all of it done early and then just stress about the stuff that you actually need to stress about later.
Definitely. And that does sound like an overarching theme for you, Phoebe, being proactive, getting started early. So to segue into actively being in the PA program, thriving, making the most of the opportunities, but also staying afloat in classes, what are the most effective and practical time management or organizational strategies that you've seen your classmates use, that you've used, or that any PA student could begin implementing to be more in control of their schedule?
Yeah, so schedule's definitely very challenging in PA school, especially didactic. Sometimes you're doing classes, you're literally in school for nearly 12 hours or something. So I would definitely say as soon as lecture material comes out, start looking at it. Everyone obviously has their own way of doing it. Some people, they'll just skim over just to get an idea of everything that's going to be covered so they don't go in blind. For me personally, I absolutely hate looking at lecture slides. I feel like there's always way too many and I can't remember anything that way because every slide just looks kind of the same. So what I would do is as soon as lecture material would come out, which let's say it's like a day before the actual lecture, I'll start making a study guide based on that slide set. So then once I go to class, I already have a basic understanding of everything that's going to be taught. And then if there is something extra that I need to add, I can add it in very easily. I'm not struggling to keep up with what the professor's saying, what the slides are saying, and then my own note taking, and then have to put that all together afterwards anyway. So definitely, as soon as stuff comes out, just start working on it. I know it sometimes you're like, "Oh, I have time until the exam. Like, I'll worry about this a little bit later. It's fine. Like, I'll just start once class starts." But it actually does make a huge difference because you also have to think about it this way. If you start after lecture, any time that you're spending on that class is also taking away from another class. It's not just like, "Oh, this is just some free time that you're using up." You get so little time in general just to study, let alone like do other things. So as soon as you can, do it early, and then whatever free time you have later, if it stays free time, great. If you have to work on something else, you have time for that too.
Definitely. And it sounds like, as far as mental health goes, too, staying a little bit ahead of schedule instead of always trying to play catch up is much more sustainable in the long run in PA school.
Yeah, I think that's probably my number one tip to success in PA school is to stay ahead as much as you can. Obviously, for some things, if they do start piling up, it can get a little tricky, but it's a much less stressful way of going through PA school, and I think it makes all the difference. Like I know a lot of people say you like couldn't pay me to do didactic here again because it was that bad, but I mean, I wouldn't do it just for fun, but I honestly don't think it was as terrible, especially if you kind of prioritize your time.
Definitely. If you have a great method like you did, and also, putting 1 minute into preparation saves 10 on executions, really having that discipline to start early and to stay ahead, I'm sure helped you immensely. On that vein of staying ahead, so beyond clinical skills, I know that you've been working on projects outside of your program. You're a student delegate, you are part of the PA History Society. Could you tell me a little bit about how someone who has joined PA school can get involved beyond academics and really set themselves up for success later on in their careers?
Yeah, so I kind of found all these organizations randomly, usually just through like doom scrolling on the internet. It kind of depends on like the program you're in. Like some programs I feel like are very hands off. You don't hear about any of these things. And then other programs, they really want students to be involved in like all these things and you definitely hear about them. So you kind of have to take your school into account. I didn't hear about any of these from our program. I did know that there was someone in the year above who was very involved in all of these. So I kind of asked her a lot of questions and that was very helpful. But I guess the first thing before you even start doing all of this is you have to figure out why you're actually interested in like all these extracurriculars because it is a master's program and you're going to be working after. So for a lot of people, the mentality is I'm gonna pass PA school and I'm gonna get the job that I want and that's it, which is fine for a lot of people. But I think the more you get involved in this profession, the more you realize like how much has been done in such a short period of time and how much you can actually contribute even as a student because the profession is honestly very, very young. It's only been a few decades and we've already come this far. So I think once you figure out like why you actually want to get involved, whether it's advocacy or there's a state where PAs don't have as big of a scope of practice as you might have at your school, which I feel like is the case for New York, then you start looking at ways to get involved. So I found House of Delegates just because I was looking through like volunteer options on AAPA on the website. And then um, I just talked to more people about it. I went to the conference last year and that's sat in on their 2 days of meetings, like in and out, just to see what it was about. And then it was at that point I was like, I do want to apply for this. And then same thing with the PA History Society. I think I saw like an ad on Instagram or on their website or something. And then I actually recognized the previous student trustee was also the at the time the chief delegate of House of Delegates for the Student Academy. So I just randomly reached out to him and I was like, hey, like I saw you're involved in both of these. Can you like tell me a little bit more? That was very helpful. And then I just applied for both of those and then got them. And it just keeps going.
Yes, that is awesome. And I do want to backtrack to your point on finding your why, finding the sort of impact that you're trying to create in the profession. I know that outside of all of these volunteering opportunities, getting involved in the AAPA, you also run How Med Works and you create articles for that. Could you share a little bit about your why behind How Med Works as well as your involvement in the PA profession?
Yeah, so how MedWorks actually started completely separate of like all the PA stuff. So I first started it in 2022, kind of middle end of the pandemic. I wanted to create a resource that was just easily available to anyone with access to the internet about just certain medical things that I had kind of encountered that I had questions about. So, first and foremost, insurance, a lot of insurance things going on at that point, and I kind of had to look up what a lot of terms meant on their own, what was covered, what were kind of like the caveats to things being covered, because there's like a million. So after I learned all of that stuff, I figured like, oh, there's definitely other people who are wondering this too. And even though there are a lot of articles online, they're all like very official websites with very non-layman's term wording that honestly, even for me, I was like, I think I understand what this is saying, but honestly, kind of not. So I just wanted to create something that was easier for the average person to understand. And then it just kind of grew from there. So it went from like insurance terms and then different types of insurance, and then how each insurance covers different types of providers, which one's better. And then it went to different types of providers, how to find one, just very basic stuff like that. And then later, once I started applying to PA school and then got in, that's when I started writing all the pre PA articles. So, what I learned throughout the process, because again, even though there are a lot of kind of personal stories online, I feel like there wasn't really any one source that had like, oh, this is this part of the CASPA app and you have to have X, Y, and Z. And everything was just very scattered. So, I wanted to create my own that was more digestible to like PAs. And then once didactic year ended, I started making all of my, I guess, like study guides and then articles that are tailored to students who are actually in PA school. So it just keeps kind of going and going. And then I still kind of work on all three of those, just whatever mood I'm in, whatever topic that I want to write about, I'll put up an article on that. So yeah.
I think your site is so powerful because it is accessible and it is from your point of view. It's not really, like you said, using terms that are outside of a layman's, but you're walking them through your own journey, your own discovery process, and also sharing kind of what you learned along the way going through it yourself. So I think that's super powerful. You're providing something really unique in the space, and that's wonderful to hear about. Now, so on the vein of moving past didactic year into clinical rotations, how was that adjustment for you? Can you share what you're going through now and how things kind of change from didactic year in PA school?
Yes, it definitely a lot of things change. I think first off is your schedule. Didactic year, even though there are obviously shifts from week to week, it is kind of set in a way. Like you can kind of expect to have whatever classes every single week. Once you get to clinical year, your schedule changes with every single rotation. Depending on your school, that could be like 4 to 5 weeks, usually, sometimes more. And that's kind of it takes getting used to because while some are very standard, like 8 to 5, 9 to 5 kind of rotations, other ones I know for me, surgery was 5 12s a week, which was a lot. And then that was also my first one. So going from like summer vacation and then coming to school for like 2 hours for like that transition week, and then just like boom, like 12 hours, like almost every single day was a little bit nutty. But that was one thing to get used to. And then another thing is studying while you're on rotation because it's like you're working, but then you also have to study. You're not just studying like you were in didactic year, which is another adjustment. And then I think also on the topic of studying, it's not really like didactic year because during that year, you're kind of focusing on one topic at a time, usually. But here, depending, like let's say you're in internal medicine, you're literally doing cardio, pulm, GI, like everything all in one. So it's not just like you're studying for like one topic at a time. You now actually have to like know everything together. So that was kind of an adjustment. And then I do have to say though, on average, you do have more free time during clinical year. And that's why a lot of people like it also more. The schedule's usually a little bit more relaxed.
So didactic year versus clinical year, which one's your favorite then?
I honestly like didactic more. I don't think I'm my opinions in the majority for this. I've heard very consistently across the board clinical years usually the one people like more. I feel like it's always a toss up depending on your rotation. If it's really hands on and fun, or you honestly could just be sitting there for like hours every single day and just it's honestly kind of boring. So I don't like that about clinical year. I also don't like figuring out which times to study. Whereas I feel like in didactic year, like I go to class, like lecture happens, I have set studying times. It was very like predictable. I just like learning. I think I'm definitely more of a like learning. I love physio kind of person. I'm not really as much of a go 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 hands on kind of need stimulation at all times kind of person. So I prefer didactic here, but I don't think that's the like general consensus when you ask students.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know also a big part of clinical year beyond getting that hands-on experience is networking and finding mentors and finding your place in a hospital and recreating that place every 5 weeks when you switch rotations. Do you have any practical tips that future clinical year PA students can apply to excel and maybe shortcut the process that it takes for them to understand how this works?
Yeah, my number one tip for this would absolutely be introduce yourself to everyone that you come in contact with. So this isn't just your preceptor, it's any other PAs, physicians, anyone like the if you're in surgery, the scrub techs, the circulating nurses, absolutely everyone. I think you realize pretty quickly, like especially if you're in a hospital setting, how closely everyone works together. So you don't want to be one of those students that like just sticks with your preceptor and like doesn't talk with anyone else, even though a lot of times it's more comfortable to introduce yourself to everyone. I know there was like one anesthesiologist. I just said like, "Hi, my name's Phoebe. I'm a PA student. Just want to say like introduce myself so I'm not an unfamiliar face." And he was like, "Oh my gosh, like no one does that these days anymore. Like it's just like such a small thing for that students can do and like none of them come and say hi to me." So I thought that was very interesting and then it makes you feel good about doing it, but also when you do kind of put yourself out there, like you don't know what other things they work in, you don't know which other like physicians, PAs they know, like who they could put you in touch with. So just always introduce yourself, talk a little bit about them, talk a little bit about yourself. I was chatting with, he was not my preceptor, but he was one of the physicians that I was working with kind of on and off during one of my rotations. And he just randomly asked, "Oh, what are you interested in?" And I was like, I was thinking honestly, like endocrine, open to many things, but I've always loved endocrine. And he was like, "Oh, we have Dr. So and so like works here and he's our endocrinologist." And then I was like, okay. And then I didn't think about it too much. 2 days later, he was like, "Come, come, 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 come." And I was like, what's happening? And then I ran out because the scene's really urgent. And he was like, "This is Dr. So and so. He's our endocrinologist." I was like, oh my gosh. So I just, again, introduced myself, chatted a little bit, like my background, whatever. I'm very interested. And then got his contact information. And he was like, "We're definitely looking for endocrine PAs." So that's just kind of one story of how a potential job happened, but I definitely recommend just yap with everyone you know, even if it's not the specialty you're interested in. It almost always has some benefit and there's pretty much no downside. Like the downside is what they don't want to talk to you. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like that's kind of advice that you apply not just in your rotations, but everywhere through the organizations that you're involved with. I just want to go on a quick tangent here. Do you have any tips for networking overall? Something actionable that people can use who maybe aren't as familiar with networking, haven't done it, but want to get started?
Yeah, so this is actually where I feel like a lot of the extracurricular involvement stuff comes in. I didn't actually think about this at the time when I was applying for all these positions, but now that I'm actually like very deep into them, it's become a lot more apparent. You meet a lot of people through like APA, through your state PA society. So for me, it would be NISPA because that's the New York State Society of PAs. PA History Society, everyone there has done insane work, incredible work for the profession. But just any kind of PA organization you can join, there's just, they have so many things to offer that you probably never even thought about. There's just networking, there's scholarships, there's like events, there's just so many things and I feel like that's a really good way in because then you have some like common ground. You're like, oh, I'm very interested in this, and this is kind of the work I do. And then you're all part of the same org, so you keep in contact with them. And I know through like House of Delegates specifically, I've worked on policies on like different topics that I'm interested in. And then through those policies, I've come into contact with PAs who are working in those very specific areas. And that has been also a great networking opportunity. So just get involved, whatever level. It doesn't have to be like national level. It could be state, it could be just a specialty org that you're interested in. There's pretty much a PA organization for every single specialty there is surgery, derm, family medicine, emerg anything. So just join. Usually membership's pretty cheap too. I want to say like average is around 25 bucks. They don't usually charge anything outrageous. Yeah, but that would be my recommendation. It's a good way to meet people.
I do want to play devil's advocate for 1 second and ask, so maybe there's a PA student that wants to get involved, but they have some imposter syndrome. They're like, I'm just a student. What can I offer? Why would these people want to talk to me? And they kind of stand on the sides and don't really engage. How did you break through the noise? How did you kind of overcome that imposter syndrome and actually provide value to the people that you come in contact with and, like stay connected with them on an ongoing basis?
I think you definitely have to do things that you can objectively point to or look at and be like I've done X, Y, and Z. So at that point, it's not about how you feel about all the stuff you've done or haven't done. There are actual things that you have done that support that you're someone worth knowing, I guess. So you can start off easy. There's always volunteer work. It doesn't have to be medicine specific either. You could be helping out, for instance, like at a homeless shelter. You could be helping out at a soup kitchen. You could be volunteering in some event. And then once you build on those, I would say go to the next level. So all of my stuff, honestly, I felt like it was kind of like one thing would build on another, would build on another. So I did have quite a bit of volunteer stuff done. And then when class student society elections were happening, I ran for the student academy rep position. And that was kind of like a next like small incremental step because it is just on the class level. You could potentially just not do anything with it, so it's a very small next step. And then after that, I was like, okay, now I want to do more AAPA stuff because through that role, I got more exposed to AAPA. And then I was like, oh, I see they have this thing, the HOD that I'm going to apply for. And then that worked out. And then after HOD was the History Society. So PA History Society. And then it just keeps going. So I think you have to start small. It doesn't have to be anything super impressive, but people like to see someone that really cares about whatever it is that they're involved in. And then once you keep kind of building those little building blocks, I feel like people notice you more and it's a lot easier to kind of be like, oh, I deserve this and I'm going to go for the next thing.
Yeah, that's terrific advice, Phoebe. And it sounds like even before the student academy rep step, writing about your experiences on how med works and taking the initiative to actually start some sort of platform was really helpful. So maybe even if people wanted to get started, they could begin by writing articles or like sharing content around the PA profession and really building a personal brand for themselves because that seems like a big part of what you did that kind of propelled you to that next level, gave you the opportunity to continue taking those steps. We are coming close to time, so I do want to ask a couple more questions and then a few rapid fires. I know that this is a question on a lot of PA students' minds. The path to becoming and practicing as a PA involves significant challenges. There's going to be lows, there might be burnout, but reflecting on your journey, is there a single most important piece of advice that you would give students about building resilience, maybe setting their expectations correctly, and just moving through PA school with grace and confidence?
Yeah, I think the one thing I would have to recommend is to always advocate for yourself, obviously in a very respectful way, but I feel like there is a very common mindset, oh, I'm just a PA student. Whether you're on rotations and you're like, oh, I'm surrounded by med students, I'm surrounded by like world-class surgeons, or even in school, you're like, all these people, all the faculty are so much older than me, and like I'm just like one student just passing through over these 2 years or whatever. But whatever you need, I think definitely vocalize it to someone. I think standing up for yourself as a student helps to build character, and it definitely helps set you up to kind of get what you deserve later on when you're actually working as a PA. I don't think when you're working is the time to honestly start like testing all these things out. I think it's kind of like a muscle you have to build to just, if you feel like something should be a certain way or you need something done, just figure out how you're going to get it and just advocate for yourself. It makes everything down the road a lot easier too, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
Self advocacy is a muscle. I love that. All right, this is going to be some rapid fire questions. So just say what's on your mind and we'll snap through these. Go to energizing study snack or drink.
Honestly, I'm thinking Oreos right now.
Very healthy.
I love
Coffee or
Oreos.
tea?
Tea.
Okay. How about your classmates? What did they say about the caffeine? What's their go to?
Everyone loves Celsius. If Celsius sees this, I don't drink Celsius, but sponsor, please.
I don't drink it,
Everyone
but
loves
sponsor me.
Celsius. Yeah.
Okay. I know they have a lot more caffeine than coffee, so that makes sense. Best piece of advice you actually used that you received as a student?
Don't use every resource that's given to you. You don't need them all. Just use the main ones, the ones that work for you, and that's it.
Shout out your notes, study guides. All right. One essential habit that you developed in PA school that you'll keep for life.
I think being proactive. I don't think there was one time where I started something early and I've regretted it. I've almost always thanked myself later for either giving myself more free time, like before an exam, for instance, or it because it freed up time for me to do something else, kind of profession related that I wanted to do.
Definitely. Yep. Plant those seeds early. What's the quickest or your favorite way to reset mentally after an intense study period or exam?
I like to go anywhere outside the house. I like going to see a movie that I've been probably putting off forever. There has been an exam. I like reading a good book, and I also do enjoy doom scrolling on my phone.
Ah, lovely. What's the most surprising thing you learned about yourself during PA school?
I think the most surprising thing, I didn't expect to be involved in this many things, or I didn't know if it was possible to really like do. I don't, it's all very fulfilling. Like, I love every single organization I'm part of. But if you told me right before I started school that I would be doing all this at this point, I honestly wouldn't believe you.
All right, last question. What makes you most excited about the future of the PA profession?
I'm most excited. Well, there's so many things that are happening right now. I feel like the PA licensure compact is actually the first thing that's coming to my mind. It's basically a compact or like agreement between different states in the US, that any state that agrees to it allows PAs from other states that are also in agreement to kind of practice across state lines. So there's a lot more mobility coming up, I feel like, for the profession. There's obviously, they're pushing for PAs to move more into other specialties. Just there's a lot of movement. So I'm very excited about that. I feel like every 2 months I see like a new state has joined the compact, and it's really exciting because then PAs can practice in a lot more states. You don't have to get a separate license for all of these that can literally take up to a year to get, I've heard in some cases. So that's very exciting. And then I don't know, I feel like I know a lot of students that are very involved professionally, and I kind of want to see what's going to happen after, just because our profession has already grown so much within the last few decades. Like, we went from like registered PA, when you see like older PAs, sometimes they hang on to that R for dear life. They'll write RPA, whereas now anyone who's gone after a certain point, it's PAC, like certified. So even just like stuff like that has also been very, very recent. There's international PA schools popping up now, and then we're trying to figure out how their board exam is going to go, if it's going to be the PANCE, if it's going to be something else. So lots of things happening, and I'm very excited to see because this profession is very young but growing very, very fast.
Absolutely. And the name change too, right? Like physician associate to
Hmm.
like
Or assistant.
physician assistant to associate. That's right.
Hmm.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, Phoebe. I know you dropped a lot of golden nuggets. Before we go, though, I'd love to hear where the viewers can find you. What's the best place for them to get in touch with you if they'd like to? Any social links, any mentions? The floor is yours.
Okay, so yeah, just not too many. Instagram, Phoebe Zhang PA. So PhoebeZhangPA. I might change the Zhang part to Kubo in the near future because I just got married. But I'm gonna keep it like that for now. Somewhere else you can find me is LinkedIn. I believe it's my first name, last name, and then the number one. And then where else? Where else? Howmedworks.com. There's an email. What is that email? I forget what
Hamedworks
it
at
is. Yeah,
gmail.com.
yeah, that. And I think that's about it.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Phoebe. Really appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the PA profession.
Thank you so much. Bye.